Ever since the pandemic hit, our whole idea of the workplace has been completely flipped on its head. What started out as, a temporary health thing has quickly become this permanent part of our economy. So let's really break down this huge transformation and figure out what it all means for our economy, for our cities, and for our own daily lives.
So here's what we're going to dive into. We'll start with the Great Remote Reshuffle, then look at this new dynamic between cities and suburbs. After that, we'll get into the corporate calculation, why businesses are doing this, and then touch on the very real human connection that's at stake, and finally we'll ask, what's next?
All right, first up, the Great Remote Reshuffle. To really get a grip on where we're headed, we got to look back at how this whole thing started, how a short-term fix somehow morphed into a long-term reality for millions of people.
And that leads us to the big, looming question, right? Is the office actually obsolete? I mean, for decades, it was the center of everything in the professional world. But is that era just over?
Okay, so here's the absolute bottom line. Companies figured out that productivity doesn't just fall off a cliff when people aren't in the office. And once they realized that, well, the floodgates just opened. Now, tons of companies are all in on hybrid or even fully remote setups for good. This isn't just some passing trend, it's the new normal.
And all of this naturally brings us to our second big topic, the new rivalry between cities and suburbs. See, this whole shift isn't just happening on our computers, it's physically changing our communities. There's even a name for it that economists use, the donut effect.
And this explains it perfectly. Just picture a donut, right? The middle is empty, but the ring around it is where all the good stuff is. Well, that's exactly what's happening to a lot of our major cities. The downtown core, once the bustling center of everything, is hollowing out, while the suburbs all around it are just booming with new people and new money.
For so long, the economic model was dead simple. You had millions of people commuting into city centers every single day. They were the ones buying coffee, grabbing lunch, dropping off dry cleaning. They supported this huge ecosystem of small businesses. And now, that whole economic engine has just been, well, completely thrown off track.
And what's so fascinating here is seeing the two sides of the coin. On one side, you've got city centers with way less foot traffic, businesses struggling to stay open, and just a massive drop in revenue. But then, on the other side, you've got this suburban renaissance. People are moving out for more space and cheaper living, and they're bringing their wallets with them. That $5 for coffee is now being spent at the local suburban cafe instead of a downtown chain. Okay, so that brings up a huge question. Why are so many companies so on board with this? Let's get into the corporate calculation. It turns out there are some really powerful reasons that go way beyond just letting employees be more flexible.
I mean, if you look at it from a business angle, the logic is pretty powerful. We are talking about huge cost savings. Companies can downsize those massive, expensive headquarters. Less office space means lower bills for everything, electricity, maintenance, you name it. But you know what? Maybe the biggest win of all is having access to a global talent pool. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. A company isn't stuck hiring only the best person they can find within driving distance anymore. Now, they can hire the absolute best person for the job, period. It doesn't matter if they live in another state or on the other side of the world. For finding talent, that is a total game changer.
But it's not all cost savings and global talent pools, right? There's a flip side. With all this focus on logistics and the bottom line, we have to ask, what about the people? What's getting lost in translation when we take away that day-to-day human element?
And that question is getting louder and louder. For all the amazing benefits of working from home, people are starting to worry about the social fabric of our workplaces. What is the real cost?
And this really gets to the core of it. Sociologists are ringing the alarm bells, saying that when you lose all those little, casual face-to-face moments every day, the bonds that hold a company culture together can start to fray.
Let's break that down a bit. On the one hand, you have what people are calling the mentorship gap. It's just harder for younger employees to learn the ropes when they can't just lean over and ask a senior colleague a quick question. On the other hand, we're all losing out on those spontaneous connections. The water cooler moment might sound like a cliché, but think about it. Those unplanned chats are where so many brilliant ideas come from.
So after looking at all these different pieces, we land at our final question. What's next for work? It seems pretty clear that we're not going back to the way things were, so the real challenge is figuring out how we're all going to adapt. At the end of the day, this is really complicated. There are huge economic pluses for some and pretty big social minuses for others. But one thing's for sure, the genie is out of the bottle. People expect flexibility now, and the idea of everyone going back to the office 5 days a week, well, that seems incredibly unlikely. And honestly, this quote really just says it all, doesn't it? This isn't just some temporary experiment. We are witnessing a fundamental, permanent change in what work even means, where we do it, and how it fits into the rest of our lives.
So, the final question really lands on all of us. This new reality isn't coming. It's already here. The challenge now is to be smart about it, to figure out how to get the most out of all the benefits while finding real solutions for the cost to our cities, our companies, and, yeah, our human connections. How are we going to adapt?